If you're tired of the standard business and marketing fundamentals, frameworks, and funnels, you need a little mischief. Get ready to turn up the volume on the CEO Mischief Maker podcast, where you access conversations with seasoned business owners who have smashed through mindset barriers, innovated the standard boring business and marketing playbooks, and executed future-paced strategies with bleeding-edge tools and tactics to micro-fail their way into massive success and growth. We are Mindset Impact Strategic Catalysts helping innovative entrepreneurs focus. We are CEO Mischief Makers. Ready to make a little mischief? Hey, CEO Mischief Makers, MKJ here. And I'm telling you, connections, when you get a chance to connect with someone online and it sounds like there's a real connection and a synergy and an alignment and all those wonderful words, I would suggest you get on a call with that person, because that is what led me to my next guest, the person you get to chat with me and listen to my chat with today, Valerie Cobb. Valerie, welcome to the conversation. How you doing?
I'm doing good, and thank you for inviting me on the show. It was a fun conversation you and I had.
It was very fun and enlightening and exciting, and led to many other conversations with other people in the future. So, but you know, your path, your process, your entrepreneurial journey was very intriguing to me, and I wanted to explore it here. And I think because it will bring some value to all the people who hear our voice. So let's just start. Tell people who you are and what you do.
Who I am, that's a very broad topic.
Generally, not esoteric. We're not looking for,
I'm like, today I am, exactly. Or I'm playing someone on TV today.
There you go. Which character are you today?
Sometimes my husband thinks that. Which character are you today?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Well, in the business sense, I am in the business of growing organizations. And typically what that means is working on anything that touches on top line income or revenue. So our organization works as fractional or part-time or interim, typically chief revenue, growth, whatever you want to call us these days, because there's so many roles out there. But I think one person said our claim to fame is give us your bottom performer and let's turn them around. And when I say performer, team, not person, although we do coach individuals within that realm. We align sales, service, marketing, and new product to typically the financial statements, but also then build the teams around to execute to the future goals. And we've had a lot of fun doing that. We don't typically play on TV operations side of the fence other than RevOps. And we have all been, I call us old duffers of CEOs at different various startups or at manufacturing plants or various different things that we've all done. And we kind of work as a collective in getting that role done, because it can be a bit of a unicorn role.
Yeah, because it's not, again, that's why I was intrigued, because it's not really operations and it's not really just sales. It's making sure performance is top line where you want it to be. And then, if you're spending money like mad, well, that's a different issue. If you're running out of money, but if you need to generate more and make sure that you're efficiently and effectively, handling revenue and generating revenue, then Valerie's your unicorn. So tell me,
a unicorn, and it's definitely. So to be very clear, we're not blowing customer acquisition costs by any means. We are. It's a very mindful, cash flow driven kind of
Yes.
role.
Yes.
If you don't have cash coming in, it doesn't matter if you can cut expenses because there's nothing to cut anymore.
That's right. Exactly. So let's get into, because I know you've had various roles and come to this from a unique place, but what mindset shifts did you experience that led you from what you were doing previously to fractional chief revenue officer?
First of all, fractional is a term that for some people it's a trip up term. So it's nothing more than a piece of a pie, and
Right.
we use that piece of a pie all the time in different type of equity plays. So if you take a salesperson and you're giving them a commission, you're giving them some equity or portion of that sale, right? And
Right.
what brought me to that kind of mindset, this type of role, we like to champion, well, I guess going historically, I just like seeing businesses win. And in full-time equivalents, we've always grown companies. When I say we, gosh, I can't even say I anymore. I mean, it's like one of those things. I used to, in my full-time equivalent role, whether it was over business development or if it was over, typically it aligned sales, service, marketing, and product, period, to achieve the goals that we needed to have happen. In years ago, we used to call that, it account-based selling. The old salespeople used to run around with their book of business and they'd create their own marketing materials and they'd run around, and it was like win, not at all costs, like integrity wise, but win at all costs,
Right.
and maintain that customer, because what you wanted to do is get repeat business. So you end up with a lot of ideas centered on customer retention as well. And that was a long time ago. And I hate to say that, but it was. And I think the first mind shift was, I remember being in a role where I was growing a tax and accounting, a software development company. And it was one of the first roots of, now SaaS is, it really was renting software back in the day, but it's a payment model. And in that time, we realized, we were trying to grow that company. And I was putting out all the stops from hiring sales team members to creating call centers, cold calling teams. We now call them sales development reps. And we were doing all of these things. And then I was creating marketing material and changing some of the first roots of websites, and we were doing all of these things, and it would get to operations and the person wouldn't renew, or the organization wouldn't renew. You did all this. They loved it. Everything was growing great, and dead. And it was like, well, how do I get more referrals? How do I get more sales? How do we grow if we're constantly having to replace the person that we just sold to? And that was blowing customer, acquisition costs out the door. And so I remember having to go to what they had called their operations and go and speak with the various, what we would call geek squad at the time, and say, you can't say certain things to the customer or we can't get them to renew. And subscription, you're upside down in subscription at first because they're renting, you're literally, yes, you're paying, but you're paying over time, which means all the humans that put in all of the effort in order to create that whatever unit that you're dealing with, you're upside down to like 6 months later where you're actually breaking even, and then you're finally generating some profit, right? So we lose these people, and of course that also impacted any salesperson. They couldn't get the repeat or referral business because the customer wasn't happy. So we had to create this onboarding process that is all miraculous today. And we're talking, this is a long time ago. This isn't 2014. This is a long time ago. And when I say in 2014, that's 10 years ago. Keep rewinding.
Yeah, right.
Going back, and I'm thinking, okay, so we get our marketing materials ready to go. We get, we're calling 10 hours a day. We've got cold calling teams. We've got all this stuff. How do we retain these customers? Yeah. And then, so I created this onboarding sheet because there wasn't, you couldn't just Google and say, hey, can we get templates of onboarding sheets, right?
Right. It was like, right. Where's an onboarding template?
Yeah.
Didn't exist. Yeah.
How does a human want to be treated once they have rented what you're doing to the point that they will then rebuy again? Where do you remove all the barriers? Okay. Yeah. So that's mind shift number one. Mind shift number two was I was selling what many will deem is an unsellable product, which means I'm not saying we would lie to close a sale, but it wasn't against big competitors, which there were some. I'm not going to name who they are, but they're massive competitors. Against them, our product looked like a dinosaur. So we had to get them past, and we were missing features. And I remember going to a trade event one time, and we were talking, and I was talking about EIC, and I was talking about all these things that tax and accounting does, right? And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, this customer comes up and we're going to close on the floor. We're going to handle this. And he mentions a feature that he needs. And I literally say to him, I said, oh man, we do not have that feature. Let me walk you down to the competitor because I know they have the feature. And I walked the guy down to the competitor and introduced him to a salesperson and said, this guy needs what you guys have. I know you guys have a great product. So, we don't have that, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm literally, I am laughing because not 20 minutes later, that same guy came back and said, I would like to buy your product. I can work around that feature. And it taught me another mindset that, even in an unsellable product, you can sell its positives and get people around them. It was difficult for sure. It wasn't a price objection. It wasn't any of those things. It was, I just don't think it even fits what we want. And so you fast forward many years, and I use those early roots. You could rewind even farther back with some other stuff, but we're not going to go into my history that deep. But you fast forward many years, and every single time I got hired, whether it was in heavy equipment, whether it was in healthcare, in any kind of data platform, or even today I have customers in cyber, you name it, it's the same premise. And nowadays they call it ABM, account-based marketing, by the way, but for part of that portion of it. But then the customer success teams, those guys who help and you hand off, and we have this whole science around handing off to not lose the customers at any point in the process, to rinse and repeat. And that's kind of how that, Oh, and the last part, oops, gosh, I forgot the last part. Product. Unsellable product. What do you got to do? You got to create new products. And so we got to a point where if Shark Tank were in existence back in that day, we got to the point where we could convince the founders, owners, various different stakeholders, customers, whatever. We started doing what healthcare does, clinical trials, but we started the roots of product dev, and now they do a lot of design thinking and everything around product development, right? And going through the stage gate processes. But we did it before we really thought about stage gate processes, right? It's like, it's got to meet this criteria, and it's got to do all of these things. And so we leverage that also for the future outlook of revenue. And that's where that mindset came into play is, well, if a customer needs this and we need to constantly enhance in order to renew that product, whether we called it SaaS in the day or not, whether it was monthly or annual subscription or not, we then would rinse and repeat through the product enhancements. And back in the day, it was waterfall 100%. I mean, when you were doing program development, it wasn't agile. It wasn't any of those things. It was literally, you almost had to start again every time you did updates. And so you had to be very cautious. And then you had to be able to educate sales team members and marketing and everybody else on the new releases in order to capitalize on them fast enough against the competitor. Or how were you going to do that? So there's kind of a story, and I probably talked you to death.
No, not at all. Because what I'm hearing when you were talking about that before, I can imagine, especially since you started off with, the customer retention idea, that you wanted to sell to get repeat business. And the only way, there are a couple of factors that are vital in order for that to happen. Obviously, you got to have a decent product, and they have to want it, and it works, right? That has to be number one. Price point, all those other things, we can talk about. But that was the premise, not just to sell and go on to the next person, but the premise was sell, retain, refer.
Yes.
And let me ask you this. From a mindset perspective, how has the internet, with the ability to just throw more money at an ad and find more customers, just to be able to throw money at an ad and find more customers in the internet, since now we are global and you don't have to worry about just your local area or where you can fly in a plane to your customer, that opening up of all the customers, has it made it like your skill, I can imagine, is even more valuable because you come from the premise of sell, retain, refer. So has the internet made that harder or easier?
It's a mixed bag. Obviously, like all tools, it has good and bad things, and AI the same. It's going to have good and bad. It's how you leverage those tools. One of the things that's made it very difficult is the deluge of information and sifting through it. So when I've met with business owners and founders and we talk about their goals, what are your goals? What do you really want? And I've had to have that conversation. What do you honestly want? Is it to be good to great? Is it, you're a startup? Are you trying to exit in 5 years? And if so, those are different types of teams that you create. But one of the biggest problems that you deal with is the deluge of shiny objects to actually make that happen. And so then you put in protective layers, like I said, the vision. What is it that you really want? Are you, I'm on a board right now of a child exploitation group. And we were talking about price positioning. And I was like, okay, what do you personally want? You were trying to get out the message of child exploitation. You're trying to educate owners, parents, and you can go at that so many different ways. You can go B2C, you can go through health and wellness, you can go through a lot of different things. We could get into that subject all on its own. And you can, even in marketing, think of all the assets that are at our disposal. So many are on analysis by paralysis. They're like, I've got to do social media. And one of the first questions I have to ask them is, are your buyers on social media? I mean, that's fundamental. It doesn't matter that a salesperson wants it on social media. It doesn't, I think, therefore I am, I went into one company recently and their website was throwing 2,000 errors, and they had a company that was charging them, an outsource was charging them for paid ads. And I'm like, what the heck are you doing paid ads on a broken, Google's killing you right now, and you're just throwing money down the drain. So I find that a lot of shiny objects are happening because of the internet. And, we had the whole shift in Death of the Salesman. I mean, that was, Arthur Miller, Death of the Salesman. But
Yes.
really, Death of the Salesman, people thought that internet would cause, and it was mostly going to be demand gen through digital assets and marketing, right? I mean, that's our big demand gen. They got to find it. Well, now people can't find it even on the internet.
Yes.
Right? There's a whole art about being found on the internet. And I think in some cases that has created the need for trust that is helping with human roles, but it's also muddied the trust aspect so much. I've spent money on this, therefore it didn't work, therefore I'm not going to even try that again. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes, especially small business owners, they don't have teams to try to A/B test all of the different things. So, it's caused problems. At the same time is, wow, I can write an email and I can have Gemini tell me how to tell someone to go without flipping in the bird, and it may not work. We laughed. We tested that. Actually, we were laughing today. Tell somebody that we don't want to work with them. And it was like, go bug off. We're like, oh yeah, that's what you would tell a client. Go bug off.
No.
So, I think we dance around very similar issues. There's always in sales, marketing, in revenue, there's the relationship that still has to be built. Whether you catch them in a buying window or not, we still struggle with what are the steps did they get to get to the buying window, right? I mean, we still, no matter how much data we have, how much baselining we have too much or we don't have enough. Similar problems, right? So I love it. But at the end of the day, it still causes two different things to happen.
Okay, hold on. If your mindset was shifted, you were inspired to innovate, and you were spurred into action, don't just move on with your day. Focus, my friend, and take a few minutes to visit CEOmischiefmaker.com to learn more about the value that was shared with you today. Please act now and create some CEO mischief of your own.